search cost?
We'd have to track those numbers down, so we did not use a search firm. So the only, we had internal costs associated with the time of the committee members, and then we had the cost of bringing the 3 finalists in, which I'd have to check. I mean, basically they fly coach, they stay in a modest hotel, and they get meals. They don't get paid for coming.
Yeah. We'll get those numbers later.
Yeah, Dan will track them down.
Yep.
Right, Dan? Okay.
Can you just explain why it's better to move forward this way as opposed to starting all over?
Sure. There's a whole lot before the UH Manoa campus right now, and I laid some of that out in the statement. We've been working on a new budget model. There are some organizational changes that are required. We absolutely need to turn around the declining enrollment. We need to focus on some degree programs that are really compelling for students, and some organizational changes. And I believe, and many of the people around the campus, both faculty, deans, and leadership, just believe we have to get on with creating a great future for the campus.
For that final candidate, what was the thing for that candidate?
It was really just not the right time for the candidate to make a change and move here.
You have to do 2 jobs though.
At least.
How do you do that? What's the plan?
So I've been doing it for about 5.5 months now. I've had the 2 jobs, and I would say there are some things that, because I had hoped it would be a pretty short time, that I didn't really optimize the situation as to how I could do both jobs a little more efficiently. For example, there are times when a chancellor writes a memo to a president, so I found myself sending memos to myself. So those are things that I think I can do to make improvements. I think some of the structures that we put in place, particularly at Manoa on this half of the job in my 5.5 months, I've noticed that there are things, enrollment management is a great example, where the work that needs to be done is spread across multiple associate vice chancellors who report to different vice chancellors. And what that means is that the only place all of that meets is at the chancellor. And so I think as we structure ourselves to really focus on some of these big issues, some of those things that internally arise to the chancellor really should be handled in advance by somebody, a vice chancellor or an associate vice chancellor or a dean or director.
Are you seeking any additional pay given the magnitude?
I will not be seeking additional pay.
And what about the other 2 candidates? When and again?
I'm not going to discuss, as my statement said, the recommendation from the search committee was that there was one strong candidate with whom I should reach out and attempt to bring that person here, and I did that.
And looking for another candidate, are we going to change the process of our search?
We are going to focus on really making this campus even greater than it is today over the next 2 years. And then in 2 years, we'll take a look at what the best thing to do is. No plan for how a search would be conducted at that time.
How do you arrive on 2 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I talked with some people. There were people who thought it should be longer. There were people who thought we should start a new search right away. 2 years felt to me and to a number of the people I talked with is the right amount of time to actually make substantial progress on some of these big issues and imperatives before the campus. I think the expectation is that if we were to start a search in 2 years, we could make that decision and we would likely have somebody in place within 3 years.
That's my question. Could the search have been improved at all? Could it have been better?
I absolutely don't think this had anything to do with the search. Every search has a certain rhythm. The committee did a fantastic job. We had a strong pool, and we did bring in 3 finalists who, had good qualifications. There are searches that do not succeed at other places in the country. I was just reading the higher education press, and at another university, they just went through their second search that did not conclude in an outcome. So it's not unheard of. Okay. In the University of Hawaii, the president is the head of the entire system of statewide public higher education, and that's all 10 campuses spread across our islands. A chancellor in our system heads a campus. So we have 10 chancellors, one for each of our 10 campuses. In some higher education systems, those terms are flipped, so they're not always used the same way.
So this is a recommendation, so what's the process to get it approved?
So interestingly, the board already appointed me interim chancellor. So there is not a requirement for a formal action at this time for me to continue in the dual role to which they have appointed me. I believe they will be looking at a resolution to endorse this recommendation so that they are on record as supporting it or not. And it will also give the public and members of the community a chance to testify. I'm under no illusion that 100% of the University of Hawaii faculty and leadership believes this was the best path forward, but I do.
So, can you take us through the next few steps, the upcoming months about?
Sure. So right now, I am very focused on a few things. One is enrollment has been declining for the last several years, since the end of the recession in particular. So I've been working at least weekly with a group of people, and there are other groups that meet weekly, but I talk about it at least once a week, on how to reverse the declining enrollment. And so that's what's helped me understand just how distributed responsibilities are. So there's no one person with a pulse on all the things we need to do to recruit more students and to retain the students who we do recruit. We're looking at our budget for the next year. So next academic year, there is no tuition increase, good for students. But that's challenging for a budget situation, and particularly with declining enrollment where tuition is a substantial part of our budget. So we're looking very carefully at next year's budget, and then looking at organizational improvements we can make both to help us function more effectively, to really focus on our mission, and in some cases to improve efficiencies.